Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys and gals about something that is actually really heavily understood in the strength world, but a lot of times people don't understand it, and that is that body fat itself and water weight gain absolutely improve your bench press and your squat, irrespective of muscle gains. And so this creates a bit of a conundrum for people because you'll get people who, when they cut, they're like, why is my bench and my squat going down, but some of my other lifts are not? It will throw them off a bit because sometimes people will be on a cut and their deadlift may improve a hair, right? They lose some body fat though. The bench starts going down first, the squat starts going down second. And the thing is, this is something a lot of coaches note, a lot of coaches have understood, and this has actually been studied in the lab. So, strength and conditioning researchers have actually studied this in lifters, athletes, power lifters, football players on the three classic lifts. And one of the things they noted is that bench press is most heavily correlated with body weight out of the big three lifts. On average, not saying every person automatically, around the world, but on average. They noted squat second, and then deadlift is the least correlated. And so when you look at that, it makes sense, and especially that body fat seems to interfere with deadlifts, but it gives an enormous benefit to the bench press. So in other words, yes, muscle obviously helps. Muscle obviously helps on the bench press. It's the most important factor. But the thing is, on the bench, as you gain body fat itself, some things happen with your leverages, right? To where it starts cutting range of motion, changes leverages in the pecs against the muscle and everything. And what ultimately ends up happening is that body fat gain increases the bench faster. Now, the problem with this idea is that then guys assume, well, then bulking must improve it, because if we bulk faster and the strength is going up more, we're getting more progressive overload, so therefore it's going to be more growth. But that's not what is seen in the data itself. Okay? It's the extra weight you are moving isn't creating extra tension on the muscles, and that is really what people have to understand with that. Okay? They have to understand it is not creating extra tension on the muscles, it is making the lift easier, right? It's giving you squish, it's giving you padding, it's changing the ranges of motion, okay? And this is, again, it's been noted, and many coaches have noted this, and this is why you've even seen guys like Wendler say, yeah, you can eat your way to a bigger bench press. So in other words, you take someone like me who does rep work with, 315. You guys have seen me when I was a little heavier, pause bench 365. So someone like me could have just kept bulking to get to a 405, right? You can just get fatter. Even if your leverages are bad, like for me, I have long arms. It makes benching a little harder. I don't have the best leverages for it, but I have great deadlift leverages, which is why, my deadlift tends to be better than my bench relative to, my body weight. It makes sense, right? It's my structure. And that's perfectly normal. We all have different structures, and we're all built for different lifts. We're all built for different lifts. And I've seen guys who bench more than me at a lighter body weight with shorter arms who can't deadlift what I do. Friends of mine, clients of mine, different people I've known. Why? Well, because they've got shorter arms. Like they have a better leverage for the bench press and a worse leverage for the deadlift. It's just common sense, people, basic physics. And we all have different leverages. Know your strengths and weaknesses. It's a good idea to know them. It can be helpful to you. But all that aside, sure, you could eat your way to a bigger bench, because if you just gain fat, it will make the lift easier. Okay? But accordingly, you can maintain all your muscle and technically all your force production. But as you lose body fat, your bench may go down a little bit. Even if you haven't lost muscle, even if you've gained a little muscle, but you have that less squish and less padding, your bench can go down a little bit. Okay? Happens. I'm a perfect example. You guys remember when I was bulked up a little heavier, I my best ever set, I did 315 for 8. Well, and recently the most I've done after cutting down is 315 for 4. I've done 325 for 3. And that's the best I've done recently. So for me at this point, to get my bench back up, I've got to gain muscle, right? I just need more chest, more pec, more tricep. But it doesn't mean that I've necessarily lost muscle. It means I lost fat. because I'm squatting more than I did before that bit of cutting and pulling just as much. But a lot of my other lifts are up. My incline is up. So a lot of my other lifts are up. And that's the way that we have to look at these things. So we need to understand this, though. Body fat will affect your leverages on some lifts. But again, it doesn't mean that bulking faster is going to make you get more muscle. It's just going to make the lift. So when we understand that, it's giving you a leverage advantage on the lift that makes the lift easier. Now, it'll make things like the deadlift harder. One, you're having to swing more weight up if you got more fat and more belly. Two, any sort of belly puts you in a less advantageous position for the bottom of the movement. Okay? It's a reason a lot of fat guys have to roll the bar to get around their fat to get into a better start position because they can't reach down into it with the blubber in the way. Okay? Makes sense, especially if they're wearing straps or a deadlift suit. Makes it way easier. Squat, the same thing happens. That belly fat, that thigh fat gives you squish out of the bottom. Okay? So if your fat is pushing against your thighs and your belly instead of a leaner guy, even at the same strength and muscle, you're going to have more force out of the bottom. Right? You can trampoline off that belly, bouncing off your thighs. As you lose body fat, you lose that mechanical advantage out of the bottom. And it's not that you're stronger or weaker, it's the leverages are different. The lift becomes physically harder or easier based upon that fat. Okay, it doesn't mean that you've gained or lost strength or gained or lost muscle always. It just means the fat changes the leverages and it can make it easier or more difficult. And so again, the squat and the bench press benefit from fat in terms of the amount of weight moved, not with the amount of force, say, that your muscles are generating at the tendon level always. Although they can in the pecs, if you get some extra fat under there, it can adjust that. Okay? Whereas then on the deadlift, it creates the opposite. It can create some leverages, disadvantages. So gaining fat can make your deadlift more difficult. So again, this is stuff that we as coaches need to understand. It's something that we as lifters need to understand. And it's just the way that it is. So that's why for a lean guy to have a big bench, right, is relatively rare. Okay, because the weight moved, the leverages are different. It makes it a completely different beast. So, I mean, for example, look at my range of motion there on those sets of bench versus when you see some guys who only move at 6 or 7 inches. I mean, it matters. Physics matter, right? Squish matters. And so you have to know these things if you're going to understand how bulking, cutting, and all these things will affect your big lifts. Okay, and understand that they're about leverage, not necessarily about tension on the muscle. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.